If you're from the UK but live in Spain, make sure you're registered on the Padrón. If you're not, you may find you won't be entitled to important things like healthcare and social services. Registering could also get you discounts on language classes and leisure activities. For more details, go to the UK and Spain website, ukandspain.fco.gov.uk.
Let's Talk is brought to you by British Airways. Go online to ba.com/London City. British Airways is a proud sponsor of the London 2012 Olympics.
Sorry, too busy talking to my guest off here there. Right, good. It's time to go to my first guest this morning. Now, during the bombing campaign that wreaked havoc in Northern Ireland for 30 years, ammunition technicians of the Royal Army Ordnance Corps dealt with thousands of improvised explosive devices. The unit became the most decorated in the history of the British Army. Now, the cost was high for a profession that only ever had a few hundred members worldwide. My guest this morning served 3 times with the unit and has now written the book First Light to explain firsthand how volatile and dangerous the work was for those who served in this capacity. Good morning and welcome to Paul Wharton. Good morning, Paul. How are you this morning?
Hello, Steve. I'm very well, thank you.
Okay, sorry, we're having a little chat off here there. Let me just conclude by saying, when we finish this interview, you just stay where you are and I'll continue talking to you off air, okay? Because Paul and I have a little something in common. Paul now works at a place where I used to work, but that's not what the interview is about, but we'll pick that up together later. Now, Paul, this goes back, your book goes right back, I take it to when you first joined the Army back in 1970?
1967 I joined the Army, Steve.
Wow.
At the age of 16.
Wow, okay. And back then you joined as an apprentice ammunition technician?
That's right. I went to the Apprentice College, Chepstow, as it was then. It was a 3-year apprenticeship to learn the trade of being an ammunition technician. To learn all the different ammunition natures.
Now, it's now, the name of it now, for people listening, it's now the Royal Logistics Corps, yeah?
It is, that's right. It was amalgamated, the Royal Army Corps was amalgamated into the Royal Logistics Corps. And so those are the ATOs who are working out in Afghanistan at the moment are members of the Royal Logistics Corps, that's right.
Okay, now, back then, you started to work in Northern Ireland at the peak of its troubles, really.
Well, 1974 I carried out my tour, first tour of duty. I think the peak was probably 1972, 1973. Certainly there was about 1,500 devices planted in 1972 alone. But yes, it was still quite a hectic time around about 1974.
Now, the thing is, Paul, you know, we hear these days of what's going on in Afghanistan with IEDs. But you were the kind of first guys to really start dealing with these and coming across them, weren't you?
That's right, and it was quite a shock to the system when it all kicked off, because there wasn't a pool of trained experts to deal with this. Ammunition technicians had carried out this type of work across the Commonwealth in Hong Kong, but this was a completely different dimension, and so people had to be rapidly trained to counter the advances that the IRA made, and they moved on very quickly to sophisticated devices and sophisticated tactics, and we had to develop equipment very quickly, but not quickly enough that prevented a number of men from being killed in those early days.
Now, and again, back in those early days, it was quite a small unit, wasn't it?
Well, that's right. There's only about 13 teams operating across the province at that time. There's only about 300 ammunition technicians worldwide. And yes, as I said, about 13 teams operating at any one particular time.
Now, back then, you know, just small teams, how dangerous, I mean, it's still a dangerous job, but how dangerous was the job then?
The job was probably more dangerous then, certainly for the guys who were involved right at the very beginning, because we didn't have the equipment that we have today. wire cutters and Stanley knives and hacksaws and glue were the sort of equipment that people had at the start of it. So it's extremely dangerous. I mean, by the end of 1974, three-quarters of all the operators that were going to be killed in the campaign had been killed, and probably, due to our procedures being immature and equipment that hadn't yet been developed, plus the progresses that the advancements that the IRA were able to make in their techniques and devices.
You see, Paul, it sounds like you were on a bit of a death wish. I mean, what made you go into that area?
Yes, well, I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? Because you think people would volunteer for this job or otherwise. The fact is that people who join the army, as I did before 1970, did not realise that they would have this job to do. The 3-year apprenticeship did not involve anything to do with bomb disposal, and it wasn't until the Northern Ireland campaign actually kicked off that many ammunition technicians realised that this was our responsibility to carry out. So there was no pool of experts around. You either went on and did the 2 or 3 week course, went out onto the street, or you would have to give up your profession. And most people, having put a lot of effort in to become ammunition technicians, wouldn't want to do that, and so we went on and did the job. So people didn't volunteer for this. It was just, you found out by accident.
Okay, so prior to this then, prior to going and doing that course for the bomb disposal, would your job have entailed when you first enlisted back in '67 and passing out in 1970 into the Ordnance Corps? The Ordnance Corps. What would your job have entailed? Take away the bomb disposal.
The 3-year apprenticeship is about the inspection, the repair, the proof, storage and transport of British Army's vast ammunition stocks. The ammunition the British Army uses, there are hundreds of different natures, thousands of different types, all different components. They all function in different ways. You had to learn how these worked, how they didn't work, how they would have to be disposed of at the end of their shelf life. Inspection and repair is highly formalised procedures. It would have to be written. The quality of ammunition has to be measured. So that really the job has been an ammunition examiner. That's the main role.
And when you say ammunition, can you give us examples of some of the stuff that you talk about?
Yeah, we're talking about the whole range, whether it's artillery, natures, Royal Engineer, demolition explosives, whether it's infantry, hand grenades, small arms, mines.
Absolutely everything you could think of, munition-wise, at the army. So that's quite a skilled job, then, Paul.
Yes, I think it is. It was, I can, in the book you'll see a picture of me sort of buried by manuals and textbooks, and you had to learn all the intricacies of all this stuff.
Okay, so what happens is you guys are regarded as the munitions experts. You know how absolutely everything works, so it seems a logical step to get you trained up to work on bomb disposal, because you're familiar with the intricate ins and outs of day-to-day ammunitions. But moving into the IED area was a different thing altogether, because I guess you're dealing with amateurs' work to some degree.
Well, you're dealing with amateurs, what, in terms of the terrorists, you mean?
What they're putting together, it's amateurs compared to the stuff that you've been working with in the past. So I mean, what did you find their stuff quite basic at first, and then it starts to, they get training, right. And it's tell us about that whole thing there.
Okay, well, the IRA campaign commenced with very, very simple types of devices, and they're relatively easy to deal with. But they then moved on very quickly to, electrical engineering type components, where we suddenly were faced with devices which had anti-handling switches, trembler type switches, multiple switching arrangements, that sort of device. It was that sort of device that killed the first operator who died, Captain Stewartson, which had micro switches in the base and the top. And then they moved quickly from there to devices which they could mass produce.
Sorry, can I just to go back there? Sorry to interrupt you, but on that device you said that killed a colleague of yours. That was the first time that he came across that. So therefore, he came across something he never encountered before.
That's right.
Right.
And so that's right.
So from there, you guys then have to say, "Oh, here's something brand new that we haven't encountered." But how difficult a job is that when the thing is blown up? You have to start putting it all back together again, do you, and trying to work out just what it was?
Some of these devices didn't go off. One of the problems that the IRA, any terrorist organisation, have is that the more complicated the device, the more dangerous it is for the handler. And one or two, in fact, about 30 IRA members blew themselves up planting devices. And once somebody had blown themselves up planting this device, a number of these devices were left unarmed, and so we got to see what was inside. And it's quite clear that they'd come on at a pace. And what I have to say is that scientists in the UK were working very, very hard at this time, and there was a lot of investment in developing equipment to help us in Northern Ireland.
Right. Okay, but at the same time, you were pretty ill-equipped going in with what you were doing, weren't you?
Yeah, to begin with, we were, very poorly equipped because no one knew what to expect.
Yeah. It must have been quite, on a day-to-day basis, it must have been a concerning job to be carrying out. I mean, how did you cope with it mentally?
Well, you believed in the training that you'd received, and I suppose you have the confidence of youth, and you believe that you were going to be lucky. It was a very exciting job to do, and there was a lot of satisfaction in saving people's property and the like.
I can understand that, but it's still a high risk, very high risk. But not to put you off, you spent 25 years in the Ordnance Corps. So I take it not always 25 years, always on the front line in that way, or was it?
No, I served 3 tours in Northern Ireland. I served as a number 2 on a team in Omagh in 1974, and I went back for a year around headquarters and Belfast from 75 to 76, and then I went on my 3rd and final tour to South Omagh in 1981. In between those tours, and this is one of the things that the book brings out, which other books haven't brought out, is all the work that we carried out in between those tours. So we went back to normal routine, and then we'd be plucked out of normal work, if you like. We'd do a 2 or 3 week course, and then you'd be back on the street again for another 4-month tour.
Right, so they gave you like a refresher course every time before you went on?
That's right.
Okay, we're talking to Paul Wharton, former Major with the Royal Ordnance Corps, but his book, First Light. Now, Paul, also in the book, the book is really a tribute to the young men and the courage and the bravery that they displayed through that time, but you are quite strong in your feelings that they haven't been honoured in the way that perhaps they should have been.
That's right. I mean, when we look back now and we look at this, we can see that, I think they were acts of gallantry. They weren't recognised at the time, and I'm not sure that really, when you consider what was achieved, that they've been really appreciated, to be honest.
When you look at the news that comes out of Afghanistan and you see the recognition that seems to go towards the guys doing a similar job now, and you look at the there was a film that won all the Oscars, and the name of it has just escaped me now.
The Hurt Locker.
The Hurt Locker, yeah. When you look at the likes of that now, how does that make you feel? Do you feel inside a little bit, oh, they're getting recognition that we didn't get, or are you pleased to see that development?
That's absolutely wonderful that they are getting the recognition that these guys, and these guys deserve it, because, you know, the difference between what we were doing and what they're doing is they're doing it often under fire in combat conditions. It's a completely different type of war, different dimension. So it's a wonderful thing that these people are recognised and their families have something to show that their work was appreciated. And I think we look back at the 17 guys who were killed, it's hard to say whether they were appreciated. And it is the most decorated. The 321 EOD Squadron in Northern Ireland is the most decorated unit in the history of the British Army. It's sad, isn't it, that the casualties didn't receive any recognition at all.
It is sad. I mean, it seems a bit... It's a strange one, as you just said, and you've taken me to a question I was going to ask you. You know, how can it be the most decorated in the history of the British Army, yet still, you know, these guys haven't been recognised properly? I mean, what would you like to have seen recognition-wise? What would you like to see them receive, even posthumously now?
It's too late now for them to be formally recognised. I mean, it's a historical footnote to that campaign, but I'd just like to see that they are appreciated in some way, that there is perhaps a public memorial to these people, which there isn't at the moment. I've been working with the BBC over the last year in the making of a documentary. It's called The Long Walk. It's about to be broadcast in the next month or so, and you know, this covers those points exactly. Right.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about that programme?
It was as a result of the book First Light that I was approached by Brendan Byrne, who's the director of the team, and they said they wanted to make a documentary on the Northern Ireland bomb disposal work. And I've, as I say, I've been working with them now on and off for the past year. Myself and two colleagues were taken back to Northern Ireland just before Christmas.
How did that feel, going back to Northern Ireland?
It was very, very interesting, an emotional experience for us, and in one sense very emotional and poignant, and on the other side very enjoyable, because I did always want to go back, walking the old ground again. Some of these incidents that I almost came a cropper over, and also had the opportunity to go back to the scene of where my successor, Warrant Officer Michael O'Neill, was killed the following week after I left, and we did a scene there. So that's been for me a very rewarding experience working with the BBC on this documentary. Okay,
so that's coming out shortly?
Yes, expected to be, I'm told, in the next month or so.
Right, okay. And the name of it is The Long Walk, did you say?
The Long Walk.
Right, I'm going to look out for that with interest. I just... So ironic you talking about going back there, and one of my biggest memories of Belfast was actually going over there with the company that you currently work with now, and getting a tour from the local guy on the ground there, so which I found fascinating. Right, the book is called First Light. It's by my guest this morning, Paul Wharton, and there's a coming documentary as well on BBC, The Long Walk, which pays tribute to the job that these guys do. Paul, thank you very much for joining me this morning. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.